I could start working in taxi even now. Is that fair? And in the greater scheme of things, is that fair to traffic management? For example, the school can write stating,
yes, because they're right. That's a body.
That's a body.
Understood.
And it's a culture again. It's a culture thing because we are so accustomed to doing our own thing. Because taxi may make money in December, so you find an influx of taxis then, and then later down in the year they dwindle off. We need to be organized as a people, not only in Georgetown, but as a people, as a nation. And I think there's a lot more work to be done outside of parking meters as it relates to re-education and changing the culture of those of the citizens and even ourselves.
Okay. Caller, good day.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to both of you. I'm listening to the comments, and the thing is that with the parking meter, I agree with it. I love the system that they're putting in place because, just an example, sometimes I have a car, I have a minibus, I have a truck. Sometimes you go on registry to go in a store, and even to the owners for the store, you can't even park there. You got to go in that store to buy. That place on registry, you got to go park for half an hour. You pay $500. Sometimes you go in the store, you just pay that 50 minutes, but you still have to pay that $500. Okay, and I love the system. I love the parking. It's a system that they're going to implement because they're not like Super on registry. You know, they got park for sale and it's park on registry. And when you go to go in the store, they say, oh, park next to it, and you go to come in the store, and that is double park. And I need to police. You got to pay $7,500 for double park, and they're selling their cars in front of the store, and that same store you got to go into.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you so very much for your comment, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And Malika, I would also like to respond to that caller because that is the logic behind paying for time and not space, right? You get control over your parking in essence, and it helps to regulate traffic. So a person wouldn't come and just park their vehicle and walk down Regent Street and shop.
Exactly, I love the point that she made in terms of the double parking too, because you're, as a driver, sometimes you're frustrated. You go one place to get something for 10 minutes, and when you come out, you're boxed in. And sometimes you're boxed in for more than 10 or 20 minutes. So there are the pros and the cons indeed. Caller, good day to you.
Good day, my dear. Nice to see that we have a program where we can have an expert doing some form of relations with the general public that this will affect. One of the things I'm looking at is, as a few callers have already spoken about, is a person's ability to pay. If you realize the basic figure you just called is $1,000 for the person coming from Region 3.
Yes.
If you multiply that, you have what? Roughly 4 weeks, 5 days a week. You're roughly at $20,000 a month out of a person's salary.
Exactly.
So I think it's, for a country like Guyana, one must look at the population's ability to pay $20,000 per month just to come down to town, and this is just in a five-day period per month. You're coming down 5 days a week, and you're spending this amount of money, and then you add it up at the end of the month. My salary has not increased to compensate for that.
Exactly.
So that's one of the things that people need to take into consideration. A lot of people may say, well, okay, yes, it is good, but then if every action has an equal and opposite reaction, it means that somehow or the other, there are things that may, in terms of, we call bread and butter issues, that I may not be able to enjoy anymore because I'm taking $20,000 to pay for the parking meter, right? So I think that we need to just look at that in terms of the amount it costs per month. A lot of people don't get paid per week, it's per month. So when you add that up, it's a very significant factor. Then you do it for the entire year. You'll see what you're getting from one car.
Indeed.
You have to look at that. Just take that into consideration.
Indeed.
And lastly, I would say I'm very happy to see that we have this type of rapports happening, and we need it to happen a little bit more often with regards to the city council.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Program.
Thank you. Yes, Akim. He broke it down, and again, that is what I said just before we took the call. There are the pros and the cons, and he took it. He extended it. He talked about it weekly, monthly, and then annually. Go ahead.
Well, talking about that now, Malika, I can safely go on to the next recommendation coming out of the committee. Considering the backdrop and the, well, not pushback, but logical reasoning behind the prices, the committee had also recommended for us to have an oversight body for the project, which will meet ever so often to analyze how the project is working. So in actuality, when we meet, the prices can literally drop after that.
Depending on how people react, especially with an analysis coming from that, an analysis like that coming from that gentleman.
But to be fair to all parties involved, you must give it a chance to run. So if we notice, within 3 months this thing isn't working because the persons are still crying, and it's not a matter of it not being affordable, but it's a matter of bread and butter issues of me having to sacrifice too much now to ensure that I have parking for my vehicle. So when an oversight body meets, it's actually mandated to meet to manage the project and to let the citizens themselves understand that, listen, we're not just pushing something down your throat anymore. Gone are those days.
We're going to consult.
Exactly, we're consulting on a timely basis, and ever so often that we would have an understanding now. So when decisions are made, they're made with your best interest in mind. So we have considered that, and the oversight body will be instituted. I think we're going to be calling it a commission. Will be instituted to handle metered parking within the city of Georgetown, so as to ensure that persons don't feel left out or don't feel as if we're not considering them.
Okay, understood. Caller, good day to you.
Hi, good evening.
Good afternoon.
Oh, yes. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
It's a very interesting program, but I don't think our country ready yet for this parking meter system.
Okay.
For number one, I just want to ask one question. If you park in Georgetown, let me say that I park in front of a store, and I'm in my driving seat.
Okay.
I wanted to know if the guys that come with a clamp, if they were clamp by me.
Okay. Aki?
Secondly, I think they just reduced that price for that parking. Maybe next year from now or next year from now, it will go back to the normal price that what we was before. Thank you.
All right, caller. Okay. Aki, it's two very good points the caller made. Can you respond to that?
Let me respond to it. Malika, once you're in your vehicle and you're awaiting someone to come out of the store, you haven't parked. You're still there.
You haven't parked.
You haven't parked.
Okay.
Right? It's a difference if you turn off your ignition and you're in the vehicle and nothing else is happening. But if you're awaiting someone to come out of the store, you haven't parked.
It takes less than 5 seconds to turn on your ignition. You know this, I know that.
But I'm just saying that to say, listen, if you're in your vehicle and you turn it on,
it should be fine.
Exactly, right? So you wouldn't be clamped, and we haven't heard about the situation whereby was in their vehicle and the wire still put the wheel, the booting device on it, right? We haven't heard about that. Considering the prices and it being raised incrementally, I am not going to commit to say, listen, the next 5 years prices would not raise. The next 5 years, you
can't predict.
Exactly, I'm quite sure the minimum wage will be
increased
of a significant amount in the next 5 years, and also in the next 5 years I may not even be sitting on the Mayor and City Council. So there are different heads, and as the public and as citizens we must consider these things, because the councillor is dealing with this issue now may not be the councillor is dealing with it
then, and people may have different visions.
So for the next term, that council may decide, listen, we don't want parking meters altogether.
Okay.
So it's a project that we haven't seen working for the city, and we're going to try something different.
Okay, great.
Right, so it's not a matter of it going back to the normal price, because there was never a normal price, and that's what
we're still trying to. We're still battling with it.
Exactly.
Caller, good day to you.
Good day, Malika.
Hello.
Wonderful program.
Thank you, sir.
Kind of one-sided, rated against the parking meter.
It is okay.
Particularly those persons who are saying that they're coming from out of Georgetown
and they have to pay $1,000. What they're not saying, and I know many persons who are coming from out of Georgetown, and they're bringing passengers who are working in Georgetown.
We were talking about those private vehicles, though. You know a lot who are coming and bringing passengers, yes, but they're the private. Keep in mind, they're the private cars. There are lots of people who live in Region 3
yeah, they're private
and
cars,
work in
but
town.
they're saying that when they come to Georgetown to go to work, they have to park. And when they park, they have to pay $1,000 per day. But they're not
adding up. Go ahead.
That they're charging persons who are coming to work to Georgetown also. And they're taking back those persons. And those persons have to pay them about $200 a day. So if they bring four persons with themselves, that's $800 per day. So all they're paying is $200.
I understand that, but that may be on the lesser side than on the greater side, sir. But I do understand, and I'm not saying that those cases don't exist, but
They exist in many more times than
because
not.
remember, you have entire families, and you may see a private car filled, but that's not necessarily passengers. You're saying that the families should contribute.
That mitigates the cost that you're talking about. So I just want to make that point.
Thank you so much, sir. Good to hear from you.
You're welcome.
Malika, it's an interesting
it's quite
point.
interesting.
But
Guyanese know how to survive, eh?
Exactly.
We do.
Let me say this. That came up in the committee discussion, and a case in point in New York. What happens is, in addition to parking, right? What we found happening is that persons carpool.
Yes.
Right. So if I know you're working in Georgetown because of the not constraints, but because of the system the city has introduced and the challenges we face with parking within Georgetown, we know that beforehand. That listen, we will have to pay. I can call you and I say, hey, Malika, is your card up to date? Do you have time in it? Can I hitch a ride with you? That helps, right? And it also helps with the culture of the people. So if
cohesion, this is where social cohesion comes in.
This is where social cohesion comes in. So in a community, if we know we're all working in Georgetown, because Georgetown is the central hub, we're all working here. Why do we all have to drive?
Because we have
I know it's convenient.
Negative is one, it's convenient, and two, we have, and I'm admitting that I'm guilty of it too, we have developed selfishness in our culture. And then it's not only selfishness too. Remember, unfortunately, we're in an era, and this is not only for Guyana, in an era whereby you don't know who to trust.
True.
It is very difficult and very uncomfortable, especially for those who are going to be back and forth at nights, for you to just open up your personal space, whether it be your home or your car, to strangers, because unfortunately there are unscrupulous persons out there. Exactly. You know, sometime in last year, I think it was between the months of October and November, there was a wave of carjackings. Precisely. And this is not, the victims weren't people who necessarily opened up. So imagine you opening up and making it very easily for the criminal elements out there to come after you. Give and take.
I can also suggest, Malika, that instead of opening up to strangers, if you know your family or your friends and you all work in Georgetown, these are ways to go around each of you paying for parking. Because you can then come into the city on a weekend and you can buy an 8-hour card, which will last you all the weekends of a month or all the weekends of 2 months, because now you're coming with your family.
All right, I'm going to want you to get specific on that in the weekends in terms of a full explanation on that. But before that, let's take this call. Caller, good day to you.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
My problem with the parking meter is that they brought a foreign company to run the parking meter.
Okay.
I think there would have been less problems if the city council had bought their own system and had it run by the city council. But most of the problems I think people are having is the fact that they've bought somebody here. The city council, they want to make money. But how can you make money when we're going to have this foreign company taking out our foreign exchange? That's the problem I am having with the city council. And I hope at the next mayoral election that we'll bring it defeated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. I respect her opinion. Akim, I don't know if you can comment on the Because really and truly, she has made a good point, but the argument is that we're bringing parking meters, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. One of the arguments being put forward by the council is that we're bringing parking meters here because the city needs money and the city needs to be upkept. However, this caller, like so many others, I'm sure, is concerned that, look, indeed, this is a foreign company, and the first thing you think when you hear, because you're having the discussions with oil, unfortunately, but the first thing you hear when you think about when you hear a foreign company is that, oh, they come in to use our own, the way we speak in Creolese, they come in and take all the money and carry it out. Comment on that.
Malika, now we're moving into the business realm of things, and the committee ventured into those realms also. And what we understood, and this is advice also coming from the experts in the accounting fields who examined the documents from the concessionaire Smart City Solutions with expenses, with what they're proposing to do, what's coming to the city, etc. And what we found out is this, and I'll give you a simple example. If myself and you, we both worked for $1,000, and I give you 20% of that, which is $200.
Yes.
And you go away with your 200, right? You're still there. And we catch a car and we go down to the bus park, and I pay the taxi $500 out of my remaining $800, which leaves me with $300. That's a layman explanation of 80-20. It doesn't mean that I'm going away with $800. It means that all of the VAT, all of the expenses, all of my overheads as it relates to salaries, all of these things must be taken out before I declare my profit, if ever I make any profit at all. But you're getting your 20% out or off the top. So in actuality, it comes back to a 30-20 deal, because we can now make this public after examining the documents, not by us, because I'm not an accountant. I called in the professionals to do such. And after they've examined it, it comes back to that. And even charging $150 VAT inclusive, it means that we brought it down to 30%, that they would receive 30 at the end of it as a profit share, and we will receive 20%. But again, this is where the oversight committee is important, because during all of these deliberations on an annual basis or even on a 6-month basis, what we will be doing is re-evaluating our position as the city as it relates to the accounting aspects of things. So at year 2, we can say, listen, we've noticed that that the project is booming and that you have, been getting a lot of good responses from it. So what we're going to do now is that...
Caller, we'll take your call in a moment.
We're going to bargain on improving our side of the fence, because Malika, I want the public to understand something. Yes, this contract was given to a foreign company, and that was something that I was against from the inception. But what we have found is that we have been committed to a contract which is binding, and if I decide to hop out of it, it means that I become liable in some way.
So in other words, you're that's what you inherited, and you're kind of playing the hand that you dealt.
We inherited such. So what we have to do now is to try to shave that down exactly to what initially we would have wanted. And I want to say something also, Malika. I know the call is on the line, and we're going to take his call in a bit. But I wanted to say something. During this period of negotiations, not one local company came forward with a proposal.
Some people may want to dispute that, because there was an argument that you're talking about during, not before the period.
But I'm talking about since the contract or the bylaws were suspended for parking meters.
Okay, no one said
that, listen, we're proposing this solution instead of
Smart City Solutions.
So it gave the council options as to say, listen, even if we can't opt out of the contract, we would have reduced the responsibility of that contract and also give it to another responsibility to parking, because one of the things also is that Smart City is no longer responsible for garage parking in the city. But the thing is, you can't, as a people, we can't just complain about stuff. We got to give solutions to them.
Okay, understood. Caller?
Hello?
Welcome, caller.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
on this parking meter business.
Yes.
I'm wondering if the negotiators or whoever are considering the cost of living and economic situation in people's homes. No. Let's go to water. I'm paying 14%
on water. Uh-huh.
And electricity. To get water up to my bathroom and my kitchen sink, I have to buy a pump to pump up that water.
Okay.
I have to buy a filter. Every 3 months I have to be changing filter elements. But still 14%. Now with the parking meter again, on the backs of the people who paying tax. Not because we need money, we're going to throw everything on the people like that. Is for the negotiators to go out there and find out what is happening, see what is happening. Okay? So that is my contribution to this.
And thank you so very much, sir.
Now finish it here.
Go ahead.
I'm hearing through the grapevine that in Sophia here, there are propositions to block up the back drain.
Oh.
You see? So people would extend their land. Already people are doing it. So I don't know if there's any light could be thrown at it.
All right.
Someone in authority.
Could you say which exact can you give a specific area of Sophia?
I don't want to do that, you know.
You don't caller.
Excuse me, caller. I am as Malika rightfully said, I'm also a councillor that sits on the Mayor City Council, and coincidentally I am also responsible for
Sophia.
A section of Sophia. So if it falls within my constituency, I can assure you that I will investigate the issue. So that's why we're asking which part of Sophia.
You still
so if
I don't even know. I haven't seen. I know I vote.
You've heard. All right, I'll tell you what, caller.
I don't know if the representative for here is KIA, MIA, CIA.
All right, I'll tell you what. We will have Akeem will have someone from the council check on it. But thank you very much for that information, sir. What we're gonna, because we're coming quickly to the close of our program, we will take one more caller, but not immediately, because I think Akeem, I know Akeem would want to comment on some of the stuff.
Malika, just to give a backdrop, the previous caller, and I must say thank you for it, he explained all of the other amenities that he deemed as important.
Yes, the water, the electricity.
Right? Water, and not only the utilities, but rather the improvement to those utilities. He saw it fit to buy a pump. He saw it fit to change his filter every month. And it comes back to culture. We don't see it fit to pay for parking. And that's the bottom line. We don't see it fit.
So we have to get to that place in our lives where we
understand the importance of organized parking. And then it's when the money would not be of importance, because it can be as so low as $50.
But you'll still pay.
But once you don't notice it as a necessity, you wouldn't pay for it. It's like having a car. If you don't put gas in the car wouldn't move. So that becomes a necessity. As a people, we have to come to the place where we understand that, listen, this is important because it contributes to how my city looks. And we have to start owning our nation.
Okay, all right.
Rather than distancing ourselves from.
We'll have to take the final call now. Caller, good day to you.
Yes, good afternoon, Malika.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Straight to the point. 80-20 can't work.
Okay.
Now, nobody in this country since Burnham died have a vision like Burnham. Be it Mr. Ranger, be it Mr. Jadil, non-department, nobody have a vision like him. He would have said, if people can remember the Taku Basin when they strike the oil, and there was, he said 50-49. You can't go to that, tap it back, that's finished. That was the man. Anyway, we're not on oil, we're in the parking meter. Now, what should have happened? That's my opinion. We could have introduced toll gates back And we could have stopped vehicles coming into Georgetown from East Coast, into Georgetown from East Bank. Only those two areas vehicles come from.
Oh.
You agree with me?
Again, I hear you, but it comes back to what Hakeem and I were saying earlier. We have a problem with change and culture because let's say someone actually takes what you're saying on board and tries to introduce it. There's going to be pushback. You know that.
The toll gates, and what we had to do was make those toll gates very effective. So you don't have to build up of the traffic. If you say, oh, we sold up at the toll gate, it could have been so effective. Persons could have bought a week ticket at the toll gate if they're coming down every day. And we would not have had to share our foreign exchange 80 going out. I think that is too much going out. I mean, they're going to say Mr. Peters is there. They're going to, and congratulations to him as being the youngest councillor. But they're going to say that, okay, the solution is funding other overhead expenses. But we should have never gone that way. Never. What is ours, let it stay here. And that is what people are really negative towards, this 80-20. And I think toll gates would have worked wonderful. If our president, Mr. Gordon, was alive, we would not have gone on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, caller. I really appreciate it. Hakeem, it's food for thought. Food for thought. Of course, she talked about things that senior or the senior persons of our society, the more senior persons of our society would indeed understand. But I still feel that we are talking about it all along. Culture change. Anything new, you're going to have maybe not half, maybe less than half of the population pushing back, or maybe more than half of the population pushing back, and the remainder will say, okay, yes, we support, we understand, this is what we're going to do. And that doesn't mean that the pushback is coming because people just want to be brutal or want to be ruthless or want to be troublemakers. They really and truly are pushing back because whatever is being introduced in terms of newness, it will have a negative effect on them. Bottom line.
Yeah, and Malika, what we have to consider also is where would Georgetown be 15 years from now? A lot of persons have not asked themselves that question, therefore they could not have answered the question for themselves. But we have to place ourselves as a city 15 years from now. What do you visualize Georgetown to be like? Do we still want to be so congested and by every year 10,000 vehicles come into the country with no management system in place as we speak? Everyone is comfortable. 15 years from now, let's do the math. That's 15 by 10,000. That's 150,000 vehicles in Georgetown. Imagine and picture that without management. How crowded and congested the city would be. And Malika, I spoke before about us owning our nation and owning our city as citizens. And we have a responsibility to be organized and to also be together and united and cohesive in these matters. Because yes, because it's new, you're going to have the pushback. But one of the things I would like to say to the citizens, it comes a point in time that you have to trust your leaders. And the caller alluded to my favorite president of all time, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. He had the trust of the people.
Yes, he did.
Right? So even if he had made a pronouncement and the people trusted him to that extent to say, listen, we know, we voted for you and we understand that you're going to represent us the best way you can. And the city council or councillors, their core responsibility is to represent the people. So I would want both, even myself and all the rest of the citizens, to understand that it comes a point in time that you should trust your leaders and to understand that at the end of the day, we have your best interests at heart. We may not be able to please everyone, but in making certain decisions, we understand and listen, we are representing you, and if you were here, this may have been something that you would have wanted to happen. And the fact is, oil is coming, and if not managed correctly, that resource can either build you
or break you. Well said. Indeed. We're getting another call. We're getting other calls actually, but unfortunately, viewers, we can't take any more. Our time is up for today on Facing the Nation. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank every person who called in today, and those of you who tried and didn't get through. Specific thanks, because as you know, over the years, Facing the Nation has transformed. It has changed, and because of certain topics, we